The knock was barely a scrape, yet even ghosts in this region knew not to knock after dark. Even so, Nora Wren unlocked her door. Despite having no bullet wound, he collapsed. Only dust, bone-deep fatigue, and a child on his chest. The sun burned his skin, his boots broke from miles, and the infant, only days old, let out a hoarse-ragged cry before becoming silent, as if even breath was a luxury she couldn't afford. Nora kneeled. God above, the man cradled the baby unconscious. Limp arms, yet tight enough to keep the newborn from falling. She freed the infant, checked for fever and warmth, then examined the man's pulse, weak, thready. Who collapses with a newborn at a stranger's door? Why did the sheriff not ride out 10 minutes later with 2 deputies and rifles? You saw Calder Kane come this way, Nora decided then. She lied. No, she said, blocking the doorway with her arms. No man enters. Sheriff squinted his eyes and tipped his cap. Are you sure? Certain, she said, voice even. That falsehood ignited everything. He was Calder Kane, barely breathing and barely surviving in the back room. Not even his baby was supposed to exist. She locked the door, turned back to the man laying unmoving on her floor, and said to no one, whatever this is, it better be worth it. As the sheriff rode off in a dust storm that night. Rewind, 3 weeks previously, Nora Wren rode alone into town. She always did. She had no husband, family, or acquaintances she could trust without monitoring the wind. This world didn't accommodate women like her. Landowners paid their own way without apology. Her ranch was modest, hard dirt, dust-choked livestock, and faulty fences, but hers. Nora ran it with grit and a sidearm after her father died and her brothers scattered. Even grit has limits. After too many dry seasons, 3 calves perished from heat, and her only ranch hand rode out chasing silver rumors, Nora faced the truth. No longer could she run it alone, so she did what desperate people did then. A letter was posted at the stage stop. Wanted, ranch maintenance helper. Provided shelter, modest pay. No husband search, just assist. No drunks, nobody steals, no ghosts. N. Wren, North Ridge, 2 miles from Rattlesnake Creek. Days passed with no answers. Then reply. Arrived folded, scrawled handwriting, absent return address. Work is familiar to me. Not a drinker. I don't steal. Ghosts, though. I think they follow me despite my wishes. I'll be there by month's end if that's not disqualifying. See, the handwriting was thin. Ranchers might find it too clean. Something about the tone struck her. Honest. Wounded. Just a touch bitter. She unlatched the rear door on day 29. He didn't. She forgot. Knocking followed. Known as Kane. She discovered his name after the fever. He woke up in her spare room to sunbeams on the wooden floor and the fragrance of boiled oats from the kitchen. His first words weren't thanks. They were, "Where's she?" Nora pointed to the stove-side crib where the infant slept under her late mother's comforter. The child's cheeks were flushed, eyes wild with visions. Nora said she's okay, she survived. Like seeing an unexpected promise, the dad glanced at the baby. He nodded once before passing out again. Nora meticulously assembled the components over the next days. He limited his giving, spoke little, ate little, and slept briefly. He labored, fixed a fence without being asked, split wood without direction, and cradled his daughter with a reverence Nora had never seen from a man. A Kane was hard. Though formed of leather and smoke, he held that infant like moonlight. Questions piled up like logs. Why fever? Why the air escape? Why did the sheriff know his name? After finding the letter, every day drove her closer to wanting answers. The saddlebag lining had torn edges from overreading. Nora didn't want to spy, but Calder was still resting, and the saddlebag fell open as she moved it from the porch. It wasn't for him. Written by him. To Eliza. I can't solve it. I realize departing forfeits my claim, my name, my station in life. I won't let them sell her. Don't let him owe her. I'll run, or I'll hide. I'll crossfire if necessary. I won't lose our daughter. Calder. Words were jagged, ink splotched where the pen shook. Nora stayed beside the cot longer that night. Baby stirred once, then relaxed. She wasn't sure what storm Calder carried, but it was accelerating. When it hit, it took more than him. It would take her. The town sheriff had questions. Why no? Calder entered a year-long scene. Why had the McClellan family, powerful ranchers with political clout, Stop talking about their missing niece and her child. Why was a bounty secretly raised? For custody, not money? Why had Nora Wren, who always looked out for herself, closed her gate and started carrying a rifle to the well? Answers would arrive. Ghosts weren't the only ones after Calder Kane, therefore blood was needed. Nora Wren was about to discover how far she would go to defend a guy she didn't trust, a child she didn't birth, and a future she never wanted but couldn't leave. The wind changed in the morning. The storm faded, but the muck and silence remembered it. Clara stood at the threshold of her ranch house with a coffee cup, watching as the first feeble strands of dawn streamed over the scrub hills and glinted off the broken fence post near the barn in the brittle calm. Breathing spoiled the air. The baby was crying inside. He didn't move much overnight. She left him covered in comforters on a makeshift bed by the stove in feverish quiet. Exhausted, his muscles froze and his face furrowed with sleep-time shadows. The baby was carefully swaddled. Claire's old flannel shirts drank heartily from a whiskey flask and carved cork bottle she made. It wasn't perfect, but worked. She fed tougher calves. Naturally, that happened. The sun was risen as he opened his eyes. After repairing a feed sack seam, Clara heard him shift behind her, rustle material, and grunt. She carefully placed the needle down and watched him with the same calm, unreadable eyes she'd shown since her father's death. "You're at my ranch," she added before he could speak. "You froze at the main door with the youngster in your arms. I nourished, housed, and saved your infant." He spoke hoarsely, just above a whisper. "His name is Colt." He swallowed hard, looking at the bundle on the table. "His name's Isaac." Clara didn't nod or relax. She hid her emotions well. "Colt, anyone looking for you?" "No. You lawless?" After looking away, he shook his head. "Just exhausted. I needed a place to fall." Clara read between his jaw twitches, creases under his eyes, and slumped hands, as if they had once fought but hadn't in a while. He was thin, half-starved, and wore a worn coat and boots from a better life. However, Isaac was clean, wrapped, and cared for. Using all he had left, he defended him. "You're lucky I was kind," she remarked, pouring him a mug of hot water from the stove. "You need food, shelter, and heat. Next, earn it." As his shoulder caught the light improperly, Colt sat up slowly, hurting. Half visible under the torn shirt was a significant collarbone injury. He murmured, "I'll work." "Not afraid. You'll do more than work," she murmured, sliding the cup across the table. "You'll contribute to the household, feed the boy, assist with land, and leave your past behind." Colt nodded once. "Deal." He fit into the ranch's routine after 2 weeks. He fed the goats at daybreak, repaired the eastern fence line coyotes had dug through, and hauled spring water till his arms shook. Clara observed him silently but noted everything. He moved like a guy used to monitoring his back, flinched at startling noises, and caressed Isaac in the nights with a gentleness that didn't match his relaxation. One morning before daybreak, she saw him outside with the infant on his chest, wrapped in a large blanket, staring at the horizon as if expecting something dreadful to creep over it. He was unaware she was observing. She first saw his honesty then. Guilt, not terror. He felt it more than any illegal brand. He rarely discussed his background. He deflected her pressure. "Once had a ranch," he said. "West of here, 2 miles past Cotton Ridge." "No more." "How?" "Once," she asked. He said fire and said nothing else. He spoke less freely than the town. Drapine heard that erstwhile cattleman Colt Avery was rich in land and debt. He reportedly mortgaged everything once his wife got sick. She died too young to pay for a cure via land, herd, and homestead. There were claims he burned it all in lunacy. Some believed the ranch was burned by bank-sent men who intended to make an example of him. Whatever, he was wrecked. Law never proven anything, but murmurs pursued him like hounds to blood. Clara ignored murmurs. She watched Colt's calm, steady actions, and something changed inside her. Clara collapsed while fixing a barn gate hinge during a strong freeze. Her breath was thick, her gloves thin, and her knees buckled unexpectedly. Colt discovered her lying in the hay, face white, fingers blue. He took her inside like she was light, lit the stove, and added broth with shaky hands. She woke up hours later wrapped in every quilt he could find, with Isaac asleep at her feet and Colt crouched close, staring at the fire like it owed him. He said gently, not looking at her, "You should have called me. If you had the baby, I'd pick you." His voice broke at the end. Clara, strong-willed Clara, who hadn't let anybody select her in years and hadn't sobbed since her mother died in a dust-choked spring, felt a terrible sorrow in her chest. She looked at him sincerely and saw the guy behind the brokenness. He was surviving and rebuilding with bloody hands from the last rubble, but secrets don't remain buried on dry soil. A man from the south rode up that spring, dressed well and smelling of banker's ink and cigar smoke. He sneered and called Colt after dismounting. The man opened a folded ledger and stated, "You owe 3,000 plus interest." With arms crossed, Clara stood beside Colt. "I employ him. He earns food. To get money, ride elsewhere." Men sneered, always hiding from debt, reality, and his actions. Colt didn't flinch. "I tried to save her. It cost me everything. You want blood now, take mine." Banker laughed and spat. "I might," Clara clarified as the dust settled. No ghost, debt collector, or cop. As long as Colt breathed, her history would touch the ranch. That property and house were more than refuge. Sanctuary, where Colt would wind up with a hammer, not a gun. Colt would stare into the shadows late at night when the wind howled and the fire cracked softly. Clara couldn't identify the look. It wasn't fear. It was different. Possible regret. More importantly, hope. Everything changed when he had anything to lose again after years. The soil thawed before the air. Early spring silence lingered over Clara's property like air to be expelled. The ground, once frozen, softened under hard-working boots as faint green murmured along the roots of last year's dead stalks. The softening brought the inevitable. The land demanded more. Fencing, tilling, herd rotation, repairs. Clara had seen many seasons, but not this. Not one with others. Colt woke up early every day. He lit the fire, boiled water, and made a hot, imperfect breakfast. Isaac, approximately 3 months old, smiled. Just barely. Just enough. While Colt rocked him with one foot and sharpened tools with steady hands, the baby's coos seemed to resonate through the rafters. Clara was quiet in the mornings. As usual, she sipped coffee at the table with her sleeves rolled up and braids moist from a basin rinse. She silently observed, man and child, like she'd found something unsuitable and didn't want to scare it away. Warmth raises concerns, and spring thaw always reveals winter's secrets. That culminated. Clara visited the stable one morning and discovered Colt breathing heavily alongside a broken wagon tire. The wheel had split clean through from age, but he didn't mind the wood. His hand held the letter. A wax-sealed, tiny yellowed envelope was open but unread. It seemed strange to grasp something so light, and his fingers trembled. "It's what?" Clara probed cautiously. He regarded her. In every worn line of his face was guilt. "It's from her family," he whispered. "Isaac's mother's family. Not spoken to them in over a year. I had no idea. Someone knew he was born." Clara glanced at the letter but didn't grab it. "They want what?" The man exhaled nasally. "They want him. They say I'm unfit." Disgraced her memory. "I gave up everything she loved." They threatened court. Her back straightened. "Clara, for what reason?" Colt shook his head. "The fury is simmering but apparent. They're rich. That's enough ground. Last daughter in a land-owning family. They despised me from the start. I was a charming cattleman without coins. She married me anyway. Your son is now at risk." He didn't reply, but his jaw froze. Clara observed him for a while before taking the letter. After folding slowly, she put it in her apron pocket. She said, "They'll have to pass through me." Clara kept some secrets from herself. Colt's boots on the flooring pleased her. She smiled when Isaac grabbed her finger. That doing morning duties with someone who didn't consider her land as a burden made her feel more whole, less ghostly. However, like was risky. Worse trust. Clara witnessed broken promises as a child. Her father, rest in peace, said, "Avoid trusting others with your life. Guess how they treat animals, mend fences, and handle their worst day." By that criterion, Colt was stable. He hadn't told her anything near everything, but he contributed without complaint or pride. Clara pressed him again while fencing one afternoon. Her hesitancy was muffled by the harsh light, broad sky, and dry breeze through the cottonwoods. "Colt, what happened to your ranch?" His silence was long, just tightened the wire, stapled it, and retreated. He finally confessed that he owed too much to the bank and a hazardous individual. "I took a loan after my wife was sick, thinking I'd have time to repay, didn't." "What kind of man?" "The penless collector." Tightening stomach, Clara. What happened? Colt turned, eyes black with a haunted heat she hadn't perceived. Coming home one night, the barn was on fire, the home ransacked. My wife died days later from grief, not fire. Isaac was prematurely born a month later. I ran with him when they took the land and torched what was left in defiance. Not crazy. They wouldn't have it without me. Clara nodded slowly, throat tight. She remained silent. Colt said, "But you should know," staring her in the face. "I didn't kill. People talk like I'm a runaway outlaw. I'm not. Just a dude who ran out of hiding spots." Indeed, she believed him. The stillness after his comments sounded true, not his words. That night, she brought him a bowl of stew by the fire and said, "This house needs summer repairs, porch roof sagging, shed door sticks." He raised his eyebrows at her. "You want me to stay? I swear, there's work, if you wish." After looking at Isaac and her, Colt nodded. "We'll stay. Western peace rides with others." A week later, two local guys asked about a baby-carrying rancher. Clara heard from young Esther Price, whose father managed the feed shop, trying to find Avery, a debtor. Esther said she wore non-bank suits. One was scarred across his jaw. Some carried a comfortable pistol. Clara thanked her, hopped on, and rode home silently. Colt saw them before she arrived. The slow rider looked down the highway like vultures plucking their meat. Isaac slept inside. While chopping firewood, Colt kept a weapon handy. He rested a hand on the stock but didn't aim. "They continued?" Clara asks. "No, not yet." After taking his axe, she laid it aside. "They're not about money," she said. "They'll remind you who rules." "I know. And what will we do?" He peered down at Isaac, dozing beside the stove in a quilted corner, then looked up with quiet conviction. "We fight fiercely, but smart." Spring headed towards summer. Clara trained her raised horse. Train a foal to drag and saddle. Colt restored the chicken coop with new planks. Isaac laughed more. They lived in readiness, not dread. Clara gave Colt a paperwork one morning. The what, title to land, both our names. His gaze was on her. "They'll have to go through me to get you. If they come for me, they'll find you on this property. I'm not compromising." Colt folded paper. Carefully. "That much faith in me?" "I trust myself and what I've observed." He nodded once. "I think I should start trusting myself." Paper was folded too neatly and ink bled too crimson when the letter arrived. Clara observed a lamb tied to her gate post after bottle feeding it, after its mother abandoned it. No envelope, flat, thick parchment pierced with a bone-handled knife. No signature, no seal. Wind shook its edges, flicking like a snake's tongue as she ripped it loose. "Your home is on his debt. Our collection is in 3 days. If not relinquished, we take the debt." A wax symbol was beneath the words. "Snake eats feather." Clara held it in her fist, the breeze tugging her braid, as if nature was waiting for her reaction. She didn't yell, didn't break into the residence. She folded the letter with the same precision as its sender, entered, and placed it on the table before Colt, who was gently rocking Isaac with his heel to repair a ripped bridle. He read it once. Then slower again. "I said. He suggested it might happen to you. I wasn't told they were arranged. They weren't. Not initially. A lone shark with too many weapons and no conscience employs a few men. Since I left, they must have kept eating. A name, an emblem. That's new." Clara leaned against the sink after pouring coffee. She stared at the letter with her arms folded, waiting for its prey to move. "You owe him?" Up, Colt glanced. 3 years ago, I owed him. Debt was paid with blood and fire. However, men who construct thrones from others' losses don't give up. They just rename debts. Interest, vengeance, principle, she bluntly stated. "You're not giving up." His jaw shifted unsurely. She repeated no. "Too much has been buried to start excavating our own graves." Sleeping Isaac gurgled. Old kettle whistled low on stove. Everything seemed to focus on that time, one of those silent sacred points where a person makes an irreversible decision. Colt came up and gently removed the letter from her. He dropped it into the fire. "Those who want me must earn their place on this land," he remarked. First day's silence was too purposeful. No riders, dust-free. Everyday farm work stretched thinly across their nerves like a skin over boiling water. By midnight, Clara transported her father's antique weapon from the attic to the front parlor for real, for reach. Colt double-checked every window latch and parked the wagon crosswise behind the barn as a barrier. The home seemed as a lone lighted pulse in the great dark plain, holding its breath, not hiding. Isaac, unconscious of the turmoil around him, slept peacefully on Colt's chest. He was wrapped in Clara's childhood quilt, tattered and stained but warm and faithful. Colt didn't flinch when the boy's little hand curled into his shirt. He leaned against, the doorway wobbling, the baby's breath hot on his collarbone. "From where will they come?" Clara inquired. "Most likely south, knowing the old cow trail you can cross an arroyo that curves around it." "We should send Isaac where?" "No. We appear afraid if he departs." Also, Colt hesitated, glancing down. "We protect him better than anywhere else." She didn't inquire how he knew. She saw it in his boy holding. It was like holding the only thing in the world that only asked for love. Dust covered the southern horizon on day 2. Clara initially saw a tiny thread winding slowly beyond the crest via her scope. She tracked it till she saw shapes. 3 slow-moving riders, like wolves testing a campfire, approaching slowly. Colt said they're scouting. To test our reaction, Clara didn't blink. "We don't." When they approached the outer fence, riders stopped. One man dismounted, walked to the post and tied another letter to the wire with rawhide. They reversed direction and rode back. Clara opened the letter at the kitchen table. No danger this time. No. Bravado. One more day. After then, we collect interest. One harsh, low laugh from Colt. Clara read again, thinking it's business. We make it a bad investment. Clara opened the pantry trap door that night. The cellar was dry and used, storing root vegetables in pickling jars for months. However, she cleaned it, placed old quilts, and added lights. If things went wrong, Isaac would stay down here. Colt strengthened. Double-bolted door. Clara hung porch bells. They chatted little that night, just moved in harmony. The silence of those who have accepted the worst and are fighting for the better. Colt hugged Isaac again, singing something under his breath, while Clara watched. A lullaby soft music fashioned by memory, loss, and persistent hope that doesn't require witnesses to survive. She sat next to him. "You've changed." He didn't look. "How so?" "Not running." He watched Isaac with a faint smile. "I might have found something worth waiting for." Dawn was gloomy and harsh. They prepared. Clara carried one rifle and a pistol under her coat. Colt wore his father's hunting knife on his boot and the repeater over his shoulder. Isaac slept in the cellar, protected by 2 locks and their resolve. A warning shot was fired before noon. Clay shingles were shattered when it hit the roof edge. Clara didn't wince. From the far edge of the arroyo, she saw the muzzle flash and rounds echoing. "They broke up," she mumbled. "At least 2 sides." Colt nodded. "Take east window, covering the back. Not a siege, a test." Men didn't want to fight, wanted surrender. They circled, fired twice more, and threatened vaguely. Clara hid her face. Neither did Colt. Let silence answer. Men grew closer by sundown. Unmindful, one strolled out near the barn, thinking the sun made him inconspicuous. He shot again. That was his fault. Colt's shot split like a tree in lightning. Dropped, shoulder hit, yelling in pain. Another 2 froze. Colt screamed, "Next person to kill." The wind carried his speech farther than bullets. The 2 surviving bikers cursed and rode off hard. Colt watched as the dust faded toward the horizon. At midnight, it ended. No one returned. Clara entered the cellar to discover Isaac sleeping with a light snore. Colt sat nearby, bent. She entered beside him, smoke and dust still lingering. "Still unsafe," he said. "No," she agreed. "But we're safe." He gazed at her intently. "This wasn't required." "None of it," she replied simply. "I did." "Swallowed hard, Colt. I think I owe you everything." Clara whispered. "Your duty to him. Raise him right. Stay. Do not run." He took her hand. First time, not in gratitude or desperation. "Be quiet." Like the world had stopped spinning long enough for him to grab something genuine. He said, "I will," and she believed him. No rider crossed Clara's land for 3 days. The wounded man wasn't located, as far as Colt knew. But something changed. Air wasn't relieved. It was quieter yet uneasy, like dust after hooves trampled through, floating in midair to drift. Colt worked the field and watched the horizon those days. One hand chopped logs as the other held Isaac. The only sound was the metal creak in the baby's coos while he installed a new gate hinge. He carried Isaac to the chicken coop barn and creek, where he scooped water and let Isaac's small fingers grasp for it enthralled. Clara could tell he was listening, even though he didn't talk much. To past ghosts and unforgiven choices. Clara had also changed. Not peace yet, but maybe better. Resolve. After a protracted drought, planting seeds creates rhythm. No matter whether the clouds return, you move your hands because that's how things grow. Their stillness was no longer frigid, breathed. Clara discovered him on the porch after sunset on the fourth day, holding Isaac, their gaze captured by the pink calm of the departing sun. She said, "You can't carry him alone." Colt didn't turn. "The only good I made was him." Clara joined him, "Then let him make you good." That hit him more than bullets. One nod. His jaw set like he needed to chew the notion before swallowing it. "I buried her personally," he said. "Who?" "Isaac's mother, my wife." Clara rested on the rail. She waited, not pushed. "She died giving birth. I was fleeing my debts on the North Trail. She was quiet 2 days prior. I thought it was the weather or that she was exhausted from traveling without food or hope. That morning's contractions were too early. I was alone with a horse blanket and no doctor." His gaze fell on her. She didn't yell, just whispering his name, Isaac. She felt like she knew him forever. His slow exhalation was like dragging his coffin with every word. "Walked with him in her shawl after she died. No idea where I was headed. Just walked. Shot once in 2 days. The wound resurfaced. Too much blood loss. No concern." Clara did not speak. She grabbed Isaac and pressed him. Close. He still smelled like milk and wild grass. "Colt, he doesn't bear your sins." Colt blinks quickly. "I know. Why leave them on his shoulders?" The question rang between them like a bell. After leaving him on the porch, she took the toddler inside. Rain came the next day, first time in 6 weeks. Slow, steady rain that softens everything and makes ancient bones feel still alive. They generally rested inside drying boots and scrubbing porch planks of muck. Isaac peered at the window drips with wide eyes. Clara made bread. Isaac's cradle was repaired by Colt. She found Colt's letter that rainy day. Rather than hidden, it was folded and placed under the mantel lantern. It had no name, and the fold showed signs of repeated writing, so she opened it. "Clara, I didn't arrive to stay. I came to die gently. It was too many mistakes. Owed an excessive number of people. All I had was a youngster who never heard his mother's voice. My breakdown on your porch made me think I deserved death. You didn't treat me like a dying man. You treated me like a useful man. No idea what's next. It's unclear if my pursuers are finished. But I know. Build anything here if you let me. Not simply rows and fences. To build a life, Isaac should grow up on property that doesn't match other men's choices. And please know that you didn't merely take us in. You revived something I lost." She didn't comment. She folded the letter, placed it into the mantelboard seam, and left it. Sometimes love was unspoken, just carried. Isaac cried when Clara woke up that night. A crisp, eager sound. Not fussing. She stood up immediately, and Colt met her in the corridor with a weapon and an expressionless expression. They both froze. The front parlor window was open. Wind shifted the drapes, but Isaac wasn't triggered by it. A silhouette stood at the porch edge, beyond the lamplight. Clara saw the man's heavy, dark, rainy coat. He didn't speak or move, just stood like a question. Colt moved forward, rifle poised but unaimed. "Who are you?" he called. He raised his hand. "Not here to collect." Colt kept up the rifle. "So why are you here? I came to warn you." Colt came outside with rain on his shirt. Clara kept Isaac close as she approached the door. He removed his helmet, revealing a face Clara didn't recognize. Older, scarred, with overused eyes. "I rode with them," he said. "Your successors." Colt remained mute. He added that they won't return for a standoff. "Fire is coming in 2 weeks. 30 or more men are being recruited. Your debt is irrelevant. They want your land and your tail to stop." Colt descended 1 step. "Why are you telling me?" A crack appeared on his face. "We rode together before the blood and anger. A child shouldn't be burned because I didn't speak up." He dropped an old brass token with a crooked V onto the porch. He left into the darkness. Colt lingered before entering. "They'll return," he said. Clara nodded without asking how many. "We have 2 weeks," she said. He regarded her. "Do what?" "Make sure this land remembers its builders." Preparations began early the next morning. Colt rode to the neighboring town to redeem a loan not to run. He saw the blacksmith and farrier, widow wagon depot owner. He was calm but firm and left no space for disagreement. Clara tended the fields with a rhythm not seen in years. She strengthened the root cellar. She showed Colt her father's traps. She placed signs at the property's perimeter that didn't state "stay out" but had a meaning: barbed wire, thorn brush, and gatepost-attached hawks. They were erecting a fortress of memory and will of two people who had determined hope wasn't a given. This was created, battled for, and defended, and Isaac learned to crawl while unaware of the conflagration held back in his name. One day he crossed the wooden floor with little hands slapping, gums giggling, and Clara watched him with tears she didn't hide because she saw what they were battling for: a future, not survival or revenge. The land remembered its function. It sat quiet, nearly forgotten, smothered by weeds and kept together by old bones and aged wood for years. But now it stirred, patched and braced fences. Calloused hands pounded the barn's support beams into place without pause. Fill and cover buckets, troughs, barrels, and anything else that could hold water or food. Clara embroidered inside the house with stiff fingers from ranch work, patching ancient drapes to black out windows and hemming rough linen to wrap and bind. She didn't need to talk. Colt learned everything from her movement. She prepared to reclaim the house, not simply defend it. This went beyond survival. She wouldn't relinquish it. Colt looked less like the disheveled guy who had slumped weeks earlier at her doorstep. Ego, more like the figure who once commanded fear throughout half a territory with his presence, rather than his low, careful voice. He moved now very carefully, as if every step was evaluated against the consequences. He stopped avoiding their extended silences. He filled them with work, sweat, and simple kindnesses, like holding a door, bringing her food without asking, and warming Isaac's blanket by the fire before bedtime. This wasn't a man's penance. They were quiet offerings from someone who finally believed he deserved to stay. Daily routines tightened. Every sunrise brought new repairs, drills, and plans. Clara studied her father's old maps by lamplight, showing Colt the ravines, soft soil where wagon wheels would bog down, and dry creek bed that could be a false track. She outlined it with stones, illustrated choke points, and covered blind places. Using his entire body, he listened. Though fresh to being the learner, he knew when to follow. They constructed a system, not a castle. They weren't troops. They were two worn-out people with a toddler and a sand line. They made do with ropes tied to gates, broken glass buried under windowsills, and feed bags wet and heaped to absorb fire. In case the worst happened, Clara covered lamp oil tins under the porch in wet canvas. No last-minute escape or running. It would be a harsh arrival. The house, baby, and delicate family would be their breakpoint. Not all preparations were physical. They sat together every night as the sun set behind the buttes. Clara read from the tattered psalms with a quiet voice and never looked up. Colt held Isaac. He wasn't asked if he believed or if the words meant anything. The child calmed and Colt listened. It was enough. Colt stayed on the porch after Clara went to bed one night after Isaac fell asleep in his cradle. Heavy low moon illuminated the fields and barn in ghost light. His weapon was in his lap, not out of fear, but as a familiar companion to calm his mind. His voice was soft enough for the darkness to carry it. "Not that man anymore," he said. "I know I may have to be him again." Only once did his hand slide down the rifle barrel. Again he stayed until the cold sunk into his bones and the coyotes ceased howling in the hills. The day arrived. Morning silence was like a held breath. The clouds and horses remained still. Even the hens sensed something. Clara sensed the air was tense and about to shatter when she opened the door to feed them. She caught Colt's gaze across the yard. He nodded. It was time. After leading the mare into the barn, he closed the side gate and covered the west-facing windows with the last feed sacks. Clara locked Isaac's cot in the root cellar with blankets, drink, food, and a little oil lantern. She lighted it carefully and whispered to the baby while swaddling him. "Be quiet, sweetie. Stay safe. We'll return soon." She kissed his forehead and her hands shook, but she steadied them with love. Love gave her strength when all else failed. She climbed out, locked the door, and entered Colt's residence. "I'll cover the front," he said. "Grab the kitchen window." No further comment. Everything was decided. The exercise, practice, and mental rehearsal were done a dozen times. They know all blind spots and backups. They knew how many steps from the door to the west wall, how long reloading took, and how far a voice could go. Hooves from the west made a low rhythmic sound by noon. Colt maintained a straight face. Instead of 30, 6 riders carried torches. Everyone was armed. The man in the center wore a crimson scarf for battle, not warmth. He grinned. The charges were delayed. They rode slowly and theatrically, like they were rehearsing. Colt exited the front door. The leader called, "Didn't expect you to greet us. I expected you to run." "Have run enough." A man nodded. "Yes, you have." "Colt, debt never gets lighter, just older." Colt didn't reply. He held the rifle loosely. A leader indicated. 2 men separated and circled. One pointed his weapon at the barn. Another headed to the corral. "You have a woman?" "No." "You have kids?" Colt remained silent. He smiled wider. "Liar." The first torch hit the barn wall. Fires flickered and caught. The dry hay within hissed like a serpent. Then roar. Colt didn't flinch. Within the house, Clara moved. Shadow-like. She moved through the kitchen, sliding, lowering the rear door bolt and entering the tunnel they'd built weeks earlier. It circled the house and let her see the rider reach the corral. Took one shot. The man fell. Shouting, the rest spun instantly. Guns fired. Windows broke. She rolled behind the ancient water trough while diving sideways. Porch posts sparked bullets. Flames licked the barn walls behind him. Clara popped up behind the chicken coop, shot again, and dropped. Her cover stayed. One rider fell off his horse, screaming after the third missile clipped his leg. The rest panicked. A torch was dropped while trying to light another. He grabbed his saddle blanket. He screamed, fought it, and ran blindly into the brush. Colt moved low and swiftly. He reached the porch, kicked the gun into his hand, and pointed it at the leader. "Call it off," he growled. His gun was elevated. Colt shot first. Leader fell downward of his horse. Red scarf soaking black. The final cyclist peered. He lost 3 men in a round, 2 gone, 1 burning. After turning, he ran. Only the barn's crackling shattered the silence. They spent the day putting out the fire. Barn was damaged but not destroyed. Scared but safe horses. Isaac remained silent in the cellar. When she saw him breathing, Clara cried. That night, Colt dug 6 graves. Although they didn't deserve one, Clara didn't help. She held Isaac. She waited. Afterward, Colt sat on the porch steps, soot and grime covered, and looked at her. "I was ready to die," he said. "I wasn't," she said. "Not anymore." He looked down. "I never thought I could live here." Sitting next to him was Clara, Isaac sleeping in her arms. "Now you do," she said. Sat there until the stars appeared. The tombs were peaceful behind the bluff. 6 new mounds with only rocks and dry grass. Wind carried no judgment for the dead, only quiet. Clara lingered on the hillside. Her arms crossed her chest, Isaac in the shoulder sling. Her baby breathed sweetly with its head against her collarbone. The girl wasn't sobbing. There was no sorrow for the men buried below. Still, she waited long enough for the breeze to dry her brow sweat, long enough to honor the flames and blood that nearly destroyed everything. Her property creaked in the wind behind her. A delicate column of smoke rose from the restored chimney. Blackened yet useful, the barn stood. Although the ground was burnt, her farm had no boot impressions. There were no gunmen or tree screamers. Finally, the valley was quiet after weeks, peaceful, not afraid. In subsequent days, Colt spoke little. He worked harder, if that was possible. He repaired the barn roof with recovered shingles and cut new beams from inside. Chicken coop expansion. Fences were walked and tightened. Clara left the west gate open since her father's. Death was permanently fixed. It went beyond work. His atonement was not what he expected. There was no end to his actions, building something he wouldn't finish in his lifetime. Kind of permanence, the only meaningful apology ever. Clara noticed his treatment of Isaac with regard, not hesitancy. Not that the boy would break, but Colt may. He held him late at night after Clara went to bed, sitting by the fire, speaking without hearing, never asked what was stated. Man and child he nearly failed shared some facts. He was Colt's last blood and first to know him clean. Never again did they discuss the fire or the guys who came for him. He never questioned his old world. It burnt like the barn corner. Only ash and recollection remained. Clara discovered something unexpected under the bunkhouse floorboards in spring. She cleaned, kicking through mouse nests and damaged crates in the last storage space. She loosened something hollow with her boots. Years of dust and weather discolored a cedar box with iron latches. She opened. Bill stacks entwined in twine. Carefully handwritten ledger book. A cloth-wrapped handgun. Colt received it from her. Looking unsurprised, "I thought I'd buried that," he whispered. "You did," he nodded slowly. "That was before." Clara raised the ledger. "You recorded. I owed him. I paid with blood. I turned down the previous job. Then they came. Still had money." Running her finger down. The book spine closed and returned it to the box. "Then yours." Colt regarded her. "Not anymore." Clara regarded him. Then out the window to the orchard's first buds. Small white flowers opening in the wind. "Woman, you're not that man anymore." He remained silent. She left the box beside the hearth. Season began to alter after that. Rains came late but hard. Softer, greener grass returned after years. Corral cults were born. Barn beams held wild bird nests. Clara resumed singing. She sung quiet, scratchy hymns while gardening or washing the baby's clothes. Neighbors returned. Word spread about the raid and the guy who drove the riders away with a gun and his wife's old maps. There were no medals, but respect. The Parkers brought seed on their route to Fort Stanton. He supplied his tools and a knowing nod when old Lester from across the basin came to fix a wagon wheel without asking about Colt's background. The sheriff eventually rode to the homestead, not dismounted. He sat on his horse and waved his hat in the sun. "Another quiet place," he said. "Best type," Clara said. He looked at Colt behind her with Isaac on his hip. "Planning to stay?" "I am." Sheriff nodded. "You hear? Keep silent." Colt nodded. Sheriff turned and rode away silently. Isaac took his first steps on a late July morning. Clara shouted from the porch as Colt cut wood near the barn. Dropping the axe, he ran. On the porch's hard boards, the boy stumbled 2 steps, then 3, into his mother's arms. His face lit up. Joyful, not comprehending. The delight of beginning. Colt froze. Clara turned, beaming. "He walks." Stepping forward, Colt kneeled. He muttered, "Come on." His arms open. Isaac looked uncertain. He walked slowly and awkwardly. 4 steps, wobble, catch. 5 steps, laughter. 6. To his father's waiting hands, Colt embraced him, eyes closed. Speaking almost to himself, he claimed he was walking. Clara approached behind them and hugged them. They continued that way for ages. Wind was warm, field grass bowed slightly. A hawk flew overhead. Years passed. Isaac grew with nature. His father was tall, calm, and sharp-eyed. He laughed like his mother. Full, transparent. The ranch grew entire, not affluent. Fences remained repaired. Harvests were regular, held good. The tails faded like wounds. Still there, no longer raw. Colt-seeking men passed through. They always found silence, not denial, just absence. The man they sought died years earlier. The surviving man had a child, field to plow, a porch for dusk with a woman who saved him from the brink of the world. Hold on tight. After feeding the horses, 7-year-old Isaac climbed onto the porch one evening. "Ma?" "Sure, sweetie. Pa used to be different, right?" Clara looked at Colt, who was quietly whittling in his chair. She grinned. Softly, she said no. "Always your father. That's him." Isaac nodded happily. He stopped asking. The tale ends there. Please subscribe for more videos.